Queen Anne of the House of Stuart has died. The next in line would be James Stuart, her younger half-brother. But he's Catholic, and England passed a law that no Catholics can sit on the throne of England. So they looked for the closest Protestant heir, which turns out to be George of Hanover, a descendant of James I's daughter. Continuing our marathon, I'll be going against my own rule not to include anything before the 1960s and start with The Iron Glove, which was a movie that came out in 1954. It has both James Stuart, who could have been James III, and George I. They are not starring roles, but it's one of the only options we have to see the two of them. The movie is about an Irishman, Charles Wogan, who comes to the aid of James Stuart to try and overthrow George I. Ratings. This movie is entertaining and at times hilarious. Our Irish hero gets tricked, falls in love, and saves the day. Really, this movie is barely over an hour long, so you might as well go watch it. My only critique is my confusion over the name The Iron Glove. There is, in fact, no iron glove to be found in this movie. Someone please tell me if I'm missing something. Sex and nudity. Zero sex and nudity. In the 50s, it was obviously very dangerous to show those kinds of things on the screen. Violence and gore. This is the kind of action I can get behind. I haven't seen a good old-fashioned joust like this in a while. Lucky how no one ever actually bleeds or suffers when they get stabbed. Fun for the whole family. Next up in our marathon, we have Aristocrats. This 1999 television series shows us both George II and a young George III. They can barely even be considered supporting roles, but we take what we can get. This show is actually about the 4 Lennox sisters. We follow the 4 of them as they get married, have children, and watch how politics interfere in their lives. Ratings. Mixed reviews from me on this. There are parts I really get into, like seeing the court and the politics, and 2 of the sisters were more interesting to me than the others. But it had its ups and downs. I feel like they could have cut out 2 out of 6 whole episodes worth of content, and it would have been a tighter and more engaging story. Sex and nudity. Lots of courting and loving speeches to each other, but no actual nudity, unless you count these very sexy and obsessed over ankles. Rated TV 14. Violence and gore. Basically no violence or gore in this. However, if you are really upset that you can't watch a violent movie with George II, have no fear. Feel free to go watch instead his 5-minute cameo in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Next we have The Madness of King George. This movie follows King George III when he first starts showing symptoms of madness, and yeah, this makes me feel grateful for being alive now where science is a bit more advanced. Seriously, this poor guy has the worst of it as far as watching him get tortured and conditioned by his doctors. Ratings. It's a good movie and won a ton of well-deserved awards. The cinematography and the acting were superb. At times it had a tendency to lean towards the comedic, which maybe that was to counter the really difficult watching of the torture of this poor old guy. Sex and nudity, violence and gore. Getting both of these out of the way at once, since there is nothing of either unless you count the doctor's treatments as torture, which honestly I kinda do. Rated PG-13. Lastly, we're watching Prince Regent. This 1979 series follows George IV from his youth all the way until his time as king. We spend time with his friends, his wife, and his mistresses, but we also spend some time with George III, Queen Charlotte, and a few of their children. Ratings. The show starts off a little slow and doesn't do a great job of introducing the characters to us, but once it gets going, it's a lot of fun. Prince George is the drama queen to top all other drama queens. I have never seen a man swoon so dramatically so many times while saying lines like, "My life is in disorder, chaos. I am like a ship, storm-tossed on unruly seas." You get the idea. I was not meant to be a dramatic actress. The prince, played by Peter Egan, takes the award for that. Equally amusing was King George, played by Nigel Davenport, and Princess Caroline by Dinah Stabb. I honestly was really surprised by how much I enjoyed this by the end. I only wish I could have watched this in better quality. Sex and nudity. Sometimes you see two people laying next to each other on a bed. Violence and gore. No violence whatsoever. But I would have really loved to see George IV get into a slap fight. Oh well. It's 8 50-minute episodes, not rated, but I think all ages is fine. Thank you so much for watching. Next up, we'll be looking at the second half of the Hanovers, covering Victoria and the House of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. Happy watching!